In today's tutorial, we're making type effect text animation in Godot. This is the second episode of the series making the ultimate dialog box in Godot. As always, expect to see the full process, including the bugs, the mistakes, and my thought process on how I approach the problem. And with that out of the way, please enjoy. Excuse me. It is so hot here right now. I had to turn off my AC because it was making a lot of noise, and then, I don't want to add any noise to the video. That's the sacrifice I make. But all jokes aside, yeah, stay hydrated, everyone. It is unprecedented time now. And especially for those of us who like to stay inside, this type of heat could be very unfamiliar. So drink your water. Drink your water. As much as I love my coffee, I am trying my best to hydrate myself. So that's enough chit-chat. You probably noticed my huge mouse cursor. This is my first time using this cursor. Someone in the comments pointed out that it's hard to see the mouse. So I decided that I'm going to put a big cursor. It was a suggestion in our Discord, which, by the way, if you have any questions or want to join us in a game dev discussion, always feel free to come into our Discord and chat. Emerald, that was their name. Suggested. Actually, there was another suggestion saying that I should add a keyboard tracker, like what I'm pressing and what I'm clicking, because sometimes I do shortcuts really fast, and then that's hard to track. So let me search that real quick. All right, this is way too much work. I'll do it next time when I'm ready. I don't have time for that. So sorry. I hear you. I'm going to put it down. I'll try to explain if you have any questions on what keyboards I press. But anyways, we are working on Dialog Box, the ultimate dialog box. And today I promise that I'm going to work on showing text and text animation. I have a basic idea. It's not going to be too difficult, I think. But I think a lot of people are interested in this like type effect. So that's what we're going to work on. Maybe a little bit of scroll and determining a little bit of scroll effects and whatnot. Because after all, the ultimate dialog box needs to be generic. But I'm being mindful because when you're coming up with generic solutions, there tends to be a kind of like a familiar tendencies that I'm aware of where you generalize too much and ends up not solving any problem. Because, the ultimate generalized solution is just leaving it blank, right? Because you can do anything you want if you know how to code. So that's the 100% generalization, 100% generalization, which helps no one. The whole point of making a software solution is to solve a very specific problem. And as soon as you start to expand what that specific problem is, and then you start to generalize a solution, you end up opening up your door to not solve any problem at all. So just thinking about that real quick. But yeah, first thing I want to do, we have this dialog box that I created that I plan to use on GMTK Jam. And then there's this dialog box folder. I created a bunch of scenes and choices that doesn't do anything yet. So for example, let's say I create a new scene and say this is the main game, right? So I have a main game here. And the way it's going to be used is that I'm going to drag the dialog box into the main. And voila, you have all these options right here. And first thing I might want to do is change the layout, right? Instead of having the full rect, I'm probably going to be some sort of custom. And then the size will be, let's say, even though the texture is 300 by 100, I might want it to be 600 by 200, right? So you can see this one actually right now is in tile mode by default, so you don't see any stretching here, right? This is the magic of tile mode, and tile mode was what? Where I divide the original texture into 9 separate pieces, and corners are not stretched, right? Corners are fixed, and then the other pieces are tiled over and over again. You can see there's a repeating pattern here to give the illusion of scaling the original texture without warping them, right? Anyways, if you want to learn how to do it, you can look into my previous episode on this Ultimate Dialog Box series. Otherwise, of course, you can always fork or download the code base from the GitHub. Today, as I said, I don't want to extend this any longer than I need to. I'm going to create a text animation. So here we are. I'm going to delete this main scene real quick because I'm not going to use this anymore. That was just an example, right? So we have this ugly text. And of course, we want to be able to change fonts and all that, but we're not worried about that right now. I want to worry about the whole font customization later, afterwards, after I do all this. So first thing I want to do is I want to be able to set text through calling this dialog box code. And I made a placeholder before, but in case you're just joining us, it's just as simple as, right? Let's imagine that we had nothing here, or it's an empty script. I would just write func set text and then text string, and then we'll have some sort of implementation in here. And this is supposed to be a text setter. And of course, we want to grab this text when this function is called and assign it to the text label that is assigned to be a text. So we're going to grab that element, right? We have the text label. Oh my gosh, underscore label. And that's going to be a label component. And that's just going to be this one right here, right? Oh my gosh, I'm not used to this huge cursor. I can't tell what I'm pointing at sometimes, but it's okay. So here you would just say set text, right? Because it's the text variable right here. And this should assign it. So let's test this. Oh my gosh, I just deleted the main scene, but I'm going to need this again. So I'm going to have my test scene, which I'm creating as a main. Okay, so we have the main scene, and I'm going to drag this dialog box in like usual. And then let's set this size to be more sensible because, I want it to fit the at least expected size. So it's 300 by 100 for mine because the sprite I'm using is 300 by 100. And then I want to call this element and do set text, right? So I'm going to attach the script on the main. Doesn't matter the details here. So if I was using this dialog box in the game, I would say something like, hey, here's a dialog box, which is a type dialog box because I typed it that way. If you look at here, I gave it class name dialog box. And then I would drag and drop here so that I can control this component and then type it as well so that I can have all the autofills of the functions and whatnot, properties. And let's test it here. So I wouldn't do this in a game on ready. I would probably do it as like a trigger to an interact or whatever, right? But basically, when that happens, you would say, hey, set text, here's the dialogue, exclamation point, right? And this should set the text on the label. So if I play this, I'm going to select the main. You can see that the label has changed. Here's the dialogue. Cool. So I can set the text, but that's still not the animation. That's so easy, right? We know how to do that. We knew how to do that. That's not the hard part. The hard part is how do we do a type effect? So the way I'm imagining it, I'm pretty sure there is a multiple ways to do it. It's an animation, so we do want to take advantage of the loop. And I want to be able to control the rate of animation as well, right? So some of the fundamental things, and I think I'm going to set this variable as an export variable so that you can control these values over here, right? Because those are the kind of configuration parameters that you as a game maker or a developer would want to control. So I would say, hey, export group, we say text animation maybe, and say export var, first one would be text speed. And let's say that's like letter per second. So that will be int, right? Or maybe float, because you could have fractional letters per second if you want to have different control. And by default, I would say dot, 1 second, 1 Mississippi. That would be dot. Okay. So let's say about, 4 letters per second by default. Or, yeah, I think that's fine. So what else do we need besides text speed? Probably font, right? I think font, but then that's not this yet. So we'll worry about that later. You know how to do this. You can just drag and drop the font. So I'm not worried about that yet. So I want the text animation to obey this text speed. So how do we do that? So once again, there's probably different ways to do it. If you have any ideas that you would have rather done instead of this way, always add it to the comment. Other people can benefit from it. I can learn from it too. So I love that. Instead of directly setting the text on the label, I would say the first thing that needs to happen when the text is set, you set the target text as a variable, right? So we have a target text, which is a string. By default, it's empty. But when the text is set, we want to assign that. So what does target text mean? Target text is the string that I want to fill the label with. And you could probably already see where this is going. So process is something that gets called every loop. And delta, I believe, if I can spell that correctly, if you look at the process, delta is a float, and it is in seconds. It's how many seconds has passed since last a call to the process. So the reason I want to track the second is because that's how you would determine when you should display the next letter. First thing that I think is that there needs to be a time tracker. So we can say var time since last text update. And then that would be float starting at 0. And of course, that would reset to 0 when you set the text, because this is when the animation is starting. And then the process, you would say time since last text updated plus equals delta, so that this is continuously gathering how many seconds has passed. And it'll be if, right? If time since last text update, the number of seconds, typically would be like is greater than some set time, you would post a letter, a single letter. But I can't do that because I think given the speed, like how fast the speed is, sometimes you might have a case where in a single process update, you need to post more than one letter. So what I actually want to do is that given the time passed, do I need to post more than one letter than post a letter, right? Let's think about this. So text speed is letters per second. Or so letters divided by seconds. And then we have time since, which is seconds. So if I multiply time since with text speed, right? It looks something like this. Letters per second times second, then the second cancels out, right? Because there's a denominator with the second. Seconds cancel out, and then what you're left with letters. So that tells me that if I do text speed times time since, that will give me number of letters that gets posted. So we have time since last update, and we say number of letters to post, which will equal time since times target text speed, right? It's a velocity, right? Velocity times time equals the distance. It's the same thing. As a distance this is a velocity of the string, velocity of the letters. So if you multiply that by the time duration, then you get the number of text. And let's say if this number is greater than equal to 1, whole number, right? Because anything fractional like 0.2, 0.3 is not quite filled up enough to post a letter, right? So we say if is greater than 1, then we want to post that many number of letters onto the label. Now, here's the conundrum. I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, I mean, what if it's like 1.5? Then I post one letter, and then that 0.5 amount, it's gonna get lost, and then it's gonna restart the count. So we gotta make sure that doesn't happen. So I think what needs to happen here is first, I need to get the whole number of letters. So I'm going to make this int so that it rounds down to the number of letters, right? I think it'll automatically drop the fractional. If you're not sure that it's gonna just drop it, you can always use the floor to reduce the potential for bug. I am used to casting or converting float into int to drop the floating point and then just round down automatically. So I'm gonna trust that this is what happens. And then if number of letters to post is greater than 0, now that it's int, then I'm going to post that many letters, which is letters to post will be string. And then I gotta grab that from the target text, right? It's the subtext. It's a substring from a current pointer, whatever that is, current target index, all the way to the length, which is number of letters. And if I look at the substring, the from is inclusive from the position. It's the index that you want to grab from. And it'll say 1, 2, or something. And then you add that to the letters that are already on the label. So we would say text label set text will be equal to the set labels get text, so the string that already exists, plus letters to post. Cool. Now we posted that little increment of letters, and then now what needs to happen is from time since last text update. Now remember, this time may be amount of time. So how do I describe this? Gosh, I gotta draw this out, don't I? Yeah, I gotta draw this out. So basically we have text speed, right? And I said it's 4 per second. That means every second we're gonna have 4 post, 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 post. So 4 times. We're subdividing 1 second into 4 sections, and then the posting happens like this. What we're trying to do here is that update the underscore process might trigger at any point in this line, right? Or in these lines. Doesn't matter how many there are. So for example, if the process gets kicked in the middle of this, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. What we want to do is we want to post this 3 letters and then make sure this part of the second is not lost. So what does that mean? So let's look at a very solid example. So in this example, let's say it's 1 second divided by, so we got 1/4 second equates to 1 letter, right? It's more like this. If I can spell letter. So then in this case, the time since looks like 1/4 second times 3, because there's 3 letters, plus about half of that 1/4. So that will be 1/8, I guess, second. And what we want to do here is post the 3. So we want to post 3 letters and update the time since to be only 1/8 seconds. So we're getting rid of this part, right? How do we do that? We do this by taking the number of letters I posted and multiplying it by the frequency, which is 1 over text speed. A lot of math to say, okay, so I hope that makes sense. So you see how this is 1/4 second right here? Each letter is being posted every 1/4 second. That's the period in the wave situation. That's how many seconds has passed for a single cycle. And the cycle here is letter being posted. Every cycle, a letter is being posted. So the velocity speed is the frequency, right? How frequent things happen per second. So that is 4 per second. So the period is inverse of that, which is 1 over text speed. Ped. Yep, that's exactly what I wanted to write. Is the period, right? And so what we want to do, as I said before, is number of letters posted in this update times the period will be how many seconds I need to extract from the time since the last update to be accurate. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, let me know. Again, I do a lot of these and I try to answer whenever people have question. Of course, there's a lot of math for nothing. There is a better way to do this where you don't have to think about it. But, I'm already down this rabbit hole, so I'm going to finish this in this rabbit hole. So here we are. I said time since last update, we need to subtract the number of letters posted times 1 over text speed. I think that's what I was calling it. Yeah. And that, which is a float, will be the remaining seconds that I didn't use. Now, let's say because of the rounding errors that this becomes bigger than this. I'm not going to worry about that. I don't think that'll ever happen. But we'll see about that. If there's a bug, I might have to zero it out. But I'm not too worried. So we do time since last update. We get number of letters to post. We post those letters by adding it to the existing label and then update the time since last update. Now, that's not all, right? Because this substring might overflow. Let's say the text is 3 letters long, right? The text that we want to post. But then the update happens slow enough that it's now time to post 4 letters instead. Then it's going to try and grab 4 letters out of 3 letters. And that's what we know as a index out of bound error. We're going to try to access the index that doesn't exist. So we want to make sure this length is smaller than what's available. So current index, we got current target index. I'm using it, but I haven't defined it yet. So let's do that first. So we want to make the current target index to be set to 0. Every time letter gets posted, it's going to grab from the target index to the length and then update the target index to the new spot. So the next time I grab it from this newly set index. So we're going to make a var current target index int by default 0. So it's the index position of the string. Oh, okay, so I made a little mistake. There's already a process here. So basically I want to copy this right here quickly and move it down to where other process is, right here. Nothing changed. I just moved it over. Okay, so here's an error. It says invalid operand string and float for multiply. So instead of using letters to post, you want to use number of letters to post instead. And then I'm going to reload. Boom, no error. That's clean, clean, clean. So I'm going to open the dialog box script again. We want to make it so that this number of letters to post is actually, we got to do one more check here, is whatever is smaller, so min, between itself versus the target text size minus the current target index, right? This might be off by 1 potentially. Cannot find property size. Oh. String is length, I guess? Length. Okay, yeah, it's length, not size. And of course, this doing it every run when the target text is empty is kind of silly. So we probably don't want to do this if target text is empty, then skip. So all of this down here, the text processing won't happen unless the target text is something. And I'm going to add one more thing. If target text is null or empty, I'm going to return, not break, sorry. So return terminates the function right there so it doesn't run the rest of the process. Anyways, okay, so we have this. So let's think about this right now by testing it in our head. So for the example of 4-letter string, so let's say there's a 4-letter string, which is made out of 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Because the string is just string is just an array of letters. Better yet, to not confuse you or anyone, I'll do A, B, C, D. So let's say this is a string. And let's say the current index is 1. So we're pointing at B. So we need to post B, C, D now. And the size right now is 4. So 4 minus 1. Because the current index is, so we're imagining current index is at B. And size is 4. 4 minus 1 is 3. So the remaining letters are 3. That is correct. One other extreme case probably is if it is at the end, so 0, 1, 2, 3, right? Because the index starts from 0. So 4 minus 3 is 1. So it includes it 1, so it is correct. In my head, I think it's correct. I want to update the current target index after posting the letters. So we want to update the current target index to be itself plus number of letters that I posted, right? So in this example again, the A, B, C, D. Let's say I was at B, which is 1. So we have 1 pointing at B. I'm doing this as if there's A, B, C, D written above me. Maybe there will be. So we have B, and then we have, 3 letters left, B, C, D. And number of letters to post, let's imagine, was 2. We just posted 2 letters, which means B and C got posted. So the desired index is now at D. We want to move the pointer to D. Number of letters to post was 2, so 1 plus 2 is 3, which is index D, so that is correct. I think for the most part, this should work. Now, one last thing, we need a terminating condition, right? So we want to clear out so that it doesn't run all this all over again. When everything gets posted, we want to empty out the target text to empty string so that it doesn't loop anymore. So here at the end, we just post it, right? If current target index is greater, so that if the index exceeds the string, then it's complete, right? So its current target index is greater than equal to the size, the length of the target text, then we know it is done. So we are going to say target text now is empty. Right. And guess what? Because it's a dialog box and whoever's calling on the dialog box might be waiting for the dialog to finish, we are going to have a signal that says, to indicate that the dialog animation is done, we're going to say signal dialog display complete, so that we can signal the whatever is using the system that dialog is now ready to be viewed, or it is done, whatever intermediate steps are done. So it's going to emit. And this is interesting because you can use this to prevent user from moving on to the next text until the animation is done. Another use case would be if user puts down an input like select or escape while the animation is playing, we can trigger a complete the animation instead of moving to the next dialogue, right? So you can have a variable of behavior based on, have I received a signal of dialogue display being complete or not? Let's test what that looks like. So instead of doing it on ready, I'm going to test it by clicking on a button. So I'm going to add a button right here. And I'm going to say test dialog. Okay, let's move this button down here. And I'm going to go to the node, pressed, handle it on the main. And on button pressed, I want to do this, where I say, here's a dialog. It's really, really long, so I can see the animation. And get rid of this. So expected behavior is that there's going to be animation playing when I click on the button. There might be a bug here. We'll find out. I'm not too afraid of the bugs. Done. Oh, look at that. Here's the dialogue. It's very long. Okay, cool. Now, another thing is I could always up the speed to 20, let's say 20 letters per second. It should be faster. Beautiful. It's working. It's succeeding. We want to contain it, so we can do that. Okay, so obviously text is overflowing, so let's fix that. What we want to do is we want to go to the text label, right? And I'm just going to write down some sample text here. And then I'm going to copy and paste that a bunch of times so I can test it. And obviously this is wrong, right? So we have this auto wrap mode. And I mentioned this before in my previous. You have the arbitrary, which like cuts the word off at any point. If you do word, it cuts the point or cuts the string in per word. And if you do word smart, then it tries to cut some words smartly, I guess. You can look into what that means by just clicking click on the auto wrap mode and open documentation. You can see auto wrap mode and it'll explain right here, disable, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, the point is that we want to turn this on. And I'm going to do arbitrary so that it strictly follows the sizing rule. And you can see right here, it's restricted because the size is supposed to be 1 pixel wide. And that's why it's just like skipping down like that, right? So instead, if I make it so that custom minimum size is like, let's say 300, it limits the auto wrapping based on the custom. The problem is if I go more line, it overflows like this. So the text label is not obeying the rule properly. This is where I want to actually wrap this in a container to have proper behavior. So either you make it scrollable or not. You can decide that with scroll container. So I'm going to use a scroll container here. Scroll container. And then I'd imagine scroll container. You see the scroll bars here, it's contained, the label is contained within the container. I want the scroll mode to be there, but I don't want to show the scroll bar. So I say never show, and set the minimum size to fit the texture. And you can see right here, even though the text is overfilling, it's not going beyond it because the scroll bar or scroll container is limiting its size. So now we know we want to limit this custom minimum size to the size of the dialog box automatically. We did this on the last one with the tiled background. I'm going to go to the dialog box script real quick. And on the process, you see all the size control here where I'm doing it to the dialog texture, tile background. So over here, you want to do that to the scroll container as well. I'm just going to drag and drop the scroll container and say custom minimum size equals size on every repeat. Now, one more thing that I shouldn't forget about. The label, I changed its relational position from the dialog box. Remember, the script is on the dialog box, and this $ property getter is relevant to the dialog box's position. So it's actually now under scroll container /text. I could fix this here by typing it out. scroll container / text here. So we got to make sure we update this so that it works properly. And so now it is limited to the size of the container, the original dialog box. And you can see it doesn't quite obey the texture. We got scroll container right here. Height is 0? Is it? Oh, it is 0. Huh. Oh, it's because if I do full rect, you can see it does this. It's because it's keep, so I'll do tile mode, and it makes more sense here like this. And then instead of full rect, I say maybe like make it a little bit bigger than the original size. So I say 400 by 200. You can see it goes all the way here. If I do 150, you can see it cuts it off like this too. And of course, later programmatically, if you want to have it scroll bar or like have a little button that makes it so that the text scrolls up and down, you can always use this scroll vertical and horizontal component like this to scroll up and down. But anyways, the basic stuff is set up here now. Another thing that I might want to control here is a margin, right? So maybe I could even add a margin container. Like so. Fills and expands the parent so that it fills the scroll container. To control the margin, you gotta do a theme overrides right here. Margin left, I can have, let's say 100 margin. Yep. Okay, so you can control your margin with the little theme here. By default, I can give it a little 5 pixel margin on everywhere. Like so. Okay, well, this is kind of ugly, right? Because the scroll, You know what would be better? If the scroll container itself is under the margin, right? So the margin happens first, and then the scroll. So let's do that. Margin, scroll. There you go. Okay, so I added margin. Cool. I had to reload the project several times because I think there's some visual bugs or like the order of operation bugs in here. So I added 5 pixel margin, which you can see here. And then I added the scroll container underneath. But before that, I had to, just like everything else, I had to make sure that I turn on the clip so that it clips whatever exceeds the size of the bounding box. And then make it automatically set the custom minimum size of the margin container by going to the script. And then adding this part right here, right? So before it was, I had it scroll, just regular scroll container, custom minimum size. But instead, now that the scroll container is not there, I wanted to control the margin container. So I have margin container dot custom minimum size equal to the size, which is the size of the dialog box, which will be controlled by the user, the client. So it'll set the size to be binding of this size. And of course, that will change based on this, like this. This being the dialog box's sizing. So it changes automatically on every process. And I made it so that it expands. I don't know if this is an important part or not, but I'm afraid to change anything. So I made it so that it expands to fill the available space, which I don't think it matters if I'm setting this like minimum size. So let me just turn this off so that I don't confuse the process. I'm going to reload to see if it breaks or not, if it behaves the same. Okay, so it seems like it's working. So you don't need the fill. So we have all that. Clip content and scroll container underneath, and make sure it's never show so that the scroll effect is there, but the scroll bar doesn't show up. Clip content is on by default for this. Fill. I didn't have to do any type of programmatic changes to the layout. And for the label with the sample text, make sure the auto wrap mode is arbitrary for now. And then I made it so that it's fill expand. This one is actually important because if I don't, it just collapses on itself. So I did that. Not sure if vertical is important, but you know, I set that here. And of course, every time you change the tree, you got to go to the script and make sure this text label that I'm using is pathed correctly. So we have set text, obviously. And naturally, we want to be able to clean the dialog, right? We're going to have a clear dialog, or maybe just call it clear. I mean, that's too ambiguous, right? So let's call it clear dialog. Clear box. Let's call it clear box. And of course, that's going to reset everything. Target text becomes empty. And then also, what else do we need to clean up in this mode? I'm just looking through. Definitely some of these global needs to go away. Yes, the label needs to go away too. So we're going to do that. When we're clearing, we're going to say text label, set text empty, unless there's a clear text. Remove, no. Okay, so set text to empty. That should be fine. So I think that's it. So really quickly, let's see how this could be used in general. So I'm going to add a few buttons to indicate, hey, these are the entry point to these effects. Clear box button. We have test dialog button. And then we have, let's say, another button that says cycle speed. Because I want to be able to test that the speed can be changed in mid-text. So simple enough. Button 2, I'm going to connect pressed to main. And this is really important part of the development process, is to test these like small incremental parts so that you know for a fact that they behave as you expect. And more importantly, I'm kind of doing the integration test because this is how I expect the client, right, user of this dialog box to utilize this function. So here it is. We are going to do dialog box, clear box. That's all that's going to be. I don't have to worry about any exceptions. Button 3, I'm going to connect this as well. And this one will be doing speed up, right? So dialog box has a variable called text speed. And then what I want to do here is that I actually want to cycle through different speeds, the preset speeds, right? So for example, if I say, and this is how you would do it in a configuration for the game. You know, I don't know if you recall those games, but there are games out there where you can change the dialog box speed to be fast, slow, or instant, right? So I would say something like, hey, text speed presets, right? And then it's going to be some sort of array of integer, right, in this case, or float. And I'm going to say, hey, there's going to be really slow is about 10 letters per second. Medium probably is like 20, and then maybe you have 50, right? I'm going to cycle through these. I want them to equal to the next incremental speed. So let's say our current text speed index, and it starts at 0 by default. Right here, it's going to go through text speed, and next one will be var next speed is the array. Sorry if I keep blocking the text with my mouse cursor because I'm not used to mouse cursor being this big. And then the current text speed index is going to increment by 1, but we want to use mod to be cycling through 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. Namely, we're going to use pause mod. And if you look at the implementation of pause mod, it takes x and y. It says returns an integer that is modulus of x divided by y, right? That means right here, you can see as an example, if you do pause mod of I3, then it's going to cycle through as if it was 3 is the cap. So that's what we want to do. We're going to do pause mod current speed, right? The current value plus 1, right? Because we're incrementing it by 1. And then there are 3 sets, or whatever the size of this array is the limit. So we're going to say size of this array. And then that's going to be the next speed. And we're going to assign that. So text speed is next speed. Let's see if this is going to break if I change it in the middle of the implementation. So if we did text, something's broken. All right. Oh, yeah, that's right. This is what happened last time. So if I open up dialog box, by default, text has got all these sample texts. Right. What we need to do, we need to make sure whenever set text comes through, we clear the box beforehand. But more specifically, we want to clear the label so that it resets before adding to it. And then here it is. Here's a dialog. Oh, look. All right, that's the fast speed. Slow speed. Medium speed. Fast speed. I can change it in the middle. I can clear a box. Test, clear, test, clear, test, clear. Cool. This is the, as far as my testing goes. So this is how you would use it. I have the dialog box that I can use with different speed animation. I can do the background image however I want. So this is looking pretty good so far. So what is left for our next session? I'm thinking we're gonna start adding some choices. So you can add kind of like customizable choice buttons and boxes. And user can be creative about how they're going to use dialog boxes. Maybe they have two separate dialog boxes they use one for choice, one for text. And then I'm going to just kind of explore what that would look like. If you have some ideas or implementation or effect that you want to include in your game that I'm not covering and would like me to cover, just leave it down in the comments and I will look at it because I check all my comments. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a great time developing your game. Goodbye.